What about my love? Wasn't it enough? Just let me know so I can hold you close.
Considered and let them get another year. We'll start with Fish and we'll let him go off on his guy Mike Vrabel because he's a Titans fan.
Yeah, I'm 50-50 on Vrabel. It's kind of there's two sides to it. The way I see it, like a lot of people are okay with the firing because of how stuck in his ways he is, like with the defense, hard nosed type of guy, and can't develop the offense, can't bring it to a new level like the NFL is right now. I heard a stat earlier that 5 out of the 6 teams in the playoffs or something like that are offensive minded head coaches, and so I think that's probably where they're headed. At the same time, though, like Mike Vrabel, I still think is a really good coach. It's just you have AJ Brown and Tannehill. You keep Tannehill for too long, you get rid of AJ Brown. You bring in DeAndre Hopkins, and then you still can't really get anything going because you draft Will Levis, and then he looks kind of okay to average in the season. And it's like, at some point, yeah, thanks for throwing me off, Hayden. I don't know. At some point, you have to, I guess you have to move on. Like I said, offensive-minded head coaches, it seems to be what the Titans need. You look at other defensive-minded coaches like Belichick and Tomlin, and it just doesn't seem to be working out quite as good as it did in years past. So I don't know, man. I was a big Vrabel fan, and I said earlier this year when kind of this came out that it was kind of a rumor that it could happen, and I wasn't happy with it at all. But I kind of see where it's coming from now. So I'm just really 50. It just depends who they bring in. And like you said, with all these movements and everything, it just really depends because everybody's on the market now, I guess, at this point, unless you're a team in the playoffs or a high-level coordinator, maybe. But I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, when it comes to Mike Vrabel, I had some notes taken on this actually, and I made a whole topic out of it, but we'll just get it through quickly because it has to do with this surprise firings thing that we're on right now. I really like Mike Vrabel as a head coach, but at the same time, it's like, let's be honest. The Titans somewhat had a Super Bowl ready roster at multiple times during his tenure there. They were always just a quarterback away, and him and the front office were obviously too scared to make a big move for a quarterback early in the draft or a big free agency signing because they had Derrick Henry, they had AJ Brown, they drafted Traylon Brooks, who's been a bust pretty much. They had Taylor Lewan, who is a first ballot Hall of Fame left tackle. They had a very, very good offensive line for years and a pretty solid defense. So to be honest, all that was really holding them back was the fact that they were too scared to make a move to get a real legitimate quarterback. Ryan Tannehill isn't bad when he was in his prime, but he's not going to win you a Super Bowl. So let's be honest. If the Titans ever made a legitimate move to go out there and get a superstar quarterback, whether it be earlier in the draft or in free agency or a trade, they could have been a Super Bowl team.
Yeah,
and
100% there.
And you have Derrick Henry at his prime too. Like, if when you look back over
Wasted.
the tenure and you just say, like, look, you're going to have a pretty solid defense the whole time you're going to be here because, that's his specialty, right? He's put together pretty good defensive teams, but you have Derrick Henry in his prime, and you can't hit on receiver in the draft, and then you can't get rid of your quarterback either fast enough or take a shot on.
And you get rid of AJ Brown,
a high level guy, and you get rid of. And speaking of AJ Brown. Look, when AJ Brown was here, AJ Brown bailed Tannehill out a lot. So that's the other thing. So hindsight is 2020. If you look back, you really were only missing a few things from being a Super Bowl contending team. But I completely agree with you.
Yeah, I'll do my take after Hayden because we've been talking the entire time. Go ahead, Hayden.
Yeah, like 100%. Like with the whole Vrabel thing, it's like, am I surprised? At first, yeah, but looking back at it, I'm not because you got to think about it. That offense betting lackluster. And then they trade away their best piece, which probably was a risk that had to pay off with Trayvon Burks. He had to be huge, and guess what? He was a big flop, basically looking like a bust. And then you bring in DeAndre Hopkins, expecting him to be AJ Brown. Don't get me wrong, Hopkins was better than AJ Brown is so far in his past, but that's not the same Hopkins. This is a completely different DeAndre Hopkins. He was supposed to take the work horse away from Treylon Burks, and he never did. And then, like, 2, you draft Will Levis, taking the risk because, hey, Ryan Tannehill, he's not that guy. He's like a bridge quarterback. But guess what? Will Levis really didn't pay off as much as they needed. They needed to get a guy like CJ Stroud for that offense, and they got Ryan Tannehill 2.0, but younger, and Will Levis.
Yeah, I look at – here's the thing, right? I look at the Titans, and obviously, like I already said, man, I'm just going to re-illustrate what I said earlier, but in a different fashion. The Titans legitimately could, 4 years ago, were competing with every single team in the NFL. They beat the first seed Ravens in the playoffs, and they kept it extremely close with Patrick Mahomes. Imagine what could have been if they had just a top 7 quarterback even. They don't need a complete game changer, but if the Ravens could have just had a guy like even, let's say, Kirk Cousins, I think Kirk Cousins is definitely better than Ryan Tannehill. I think Kirk Cousins with the right team can lead his team to a Super Bowl, and I'm going to stand by that. Or even a guy like, say, Baker Mayfield, because we see what Baker's doing with Tampa now. I think Baker on that Titans team 4 years ago is a legitimate Super Bowl contending team. Now, Ryan Tannehill, for example, an aging veteran that doesn't have a lot of arm talent. He has a high football IQ, but he's not the greatest athlete. He's just a guy. Like, I'm going to use my team as an example because I know them best. The Giants right now are in the same exact situation the Titans have been in for over 8 years with Mike Vrabel. They're a solid team. They have a good defense. They have a superstar running back. They just couldn't figure it out at quarterback. They're in the exact same situation. So unless Brian Daboll gets his guy this year, he's probably going to be fired just like Mike Vrabel would. He'd be here for about 8 years, get us to the playoffs a few times, but do nothing special. So when I look at the Titans, all I see is wasted possibility.
Oh, 100%, and I agree here. It's like they needed more on that offense, and instead of going out and getting it, it's like they shot themselves in the foot. You need a guy. You need to help out Ryan Tannehill. What do? You draft Derrick Henry replacement and Tajay Spears. You get rid of A.J. Brown. You take the risk on Burks, but you don't add much behind him. Like it seemed like that first year, yes, you had Robert Woods, but let's be honest here. Robert Woods isn't what he was in LA like he is now.
He's okay, yeah.
He's okay now. You needed more support in that receiving room last year and really this year, and they really didn't adjust it besides, of course, DeAndre Hopkins, but D-Hop can't do everything by himself.
Yeah.
He needs help as well. Because, like, teams, they knew, okay, double D-Hop, we'll be fine. Let Will Levis, Ryan Tannehill, Malik Willis, whoever was out there this year.
Malik Willis.
He did have a game or two starting, I remember. So it was like whoever the quarterback was, let's have them beat us. Sometimes it paid off, but majority of times it didn't.
Yeah, I mean, not to beat a dead horse, we can move on after this, but it's just interesting to see. Like, you trade away Jonnu Smith, that was actually pretty good with the Titans, and then Chig looks like just hot garbage this year, to be honest. Like, can't develop him. There's like Chris Moore, Westbrook Akini. Like, there's a lot of receivers on this team that just are just really below average. And y'all know I'm a college guy, so I'll put this into perspective. I think Mike Vrabel coaches kind of like Jim Harbaugh. Let's get the third and short. Let's run the ball and play strong defense and win the games. Like, that's how he wants to coach. And bringing back to the point of offensive-minded head coaches, which is where I think they're going. I think that's exactly why the Titans have moved on at this point.